Well, thank you. Welcome back. I think everybody's gotten their lunch and is at least digging into that, so continue that process. I'm Skip Schweiss with TD Ameritrade again, proud sponsor of Fiduciary September with Canute. And now it's time for us to recognize Harold Avensky as winner of the 2018 Frankel Fiduciary Prize. I will have a few brief remarks, hopefully intended to honor Harold. Patty Houlihan will come up and have a few remarks, and then we'll open it to any of you in the room who would care to share some remarks honoring Harold. And then Knut Rostad will have the honor at the top of the hour of presenting Harold with the Frankel Fiduciary Prize. So, hello, Harold. Was a book, the name of a book I read recently on an airplane. That's one thing airplanes are good for. I have known Harold for quite a number of years. In fact, I knew him, I think, when he had hair on his head, before he had hair on his chin, before he had his ear pierced, I believe, and before he started wearing cowboy boots. But I haven't known Harold as long as some people in the room have known Harold. And so recently I asked a person who's known Harold for a long time, tell me about this person. And this person said, he is the most wonderful man I've ever known in my life. He's warm, he's sensitive, he's compassionate, he's thoughtful, and he might be the smartest person I've ever known. Thank you, Dina, for those words. Now, I believe I'm presenting them as such. Now, I believe Harold and Dina have been married for 27 years. Is that right? Congratulations on that. My wife and I have been married for 32 years. And if you were to ask her for a few words about me, I doubt those would be some of the words used. So that speaks a lot about your relationship you've enjoyed together for a long time. Harold, I know you as most of those things. I don't live with you, but the time we've known each other, I know you to be a very clear thinker. Some of these issues we work through and discuss and debate can seem complicated at times. And I've always valued your ability to just cut through the crap and the spin and get right to the point, especially putting the consumer at the center of all of these debates, as they should be. I've known you to be, yes, a clear thinker, a man of great principle, and most of all, just a friend. So I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to have known you these years, and I congratulate you on the 2018 Frankel Fiduciary Prize. Patty Houlihan, come on down.
I've never been good behind podiums. Well, I'm going to tell you right now before I start. Oh, okay. That's okay. I can. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm going to take a really deep breath. I've never had trouble speaking in front of groups before. This is going to be hard. I'm going to tell you a lot about Harold in a very few minutes. And I'm going to tell you about the Harold that I've known for 27 years. The reason I know it's 27 years is because you just said they've been married 27 years. The way I got to know Harold was through Dina. I was doing a PBS show back then, taping in New Orleans and some in San Diego. Dina came to be interviewed on one of the programs. And in the process, Dina and I got to know one another. And Dina said to me, you know, I'm getting married this weekend. I said, what are you doing here? She said, I've got it all planned, but that's Dina. She was going back to marry the one and only Harold Vinsky. I said, you know him? She said, yes, and so will you. She went back and she said to Harold, you have to meet this woman. Her name is Patty Houlihan. So Dina calls me and she says, he's going to be at the IFP conference. You have to go introduce yourself to Harold. Well, you wouldn't think I'm shy. Put a name tag on me and put a microphone in front of me and I'm okay. Put me in a room of a lot of people that I don't know and I want to crawl under the table. Well, Dina said, make sure he sees you. He's going to be there and I've told him that you're going to introduce yourself. So I'm looking for Harold and it's not hard to find because in a huge room full of lots of people, there's a circle that goes on and on and on and on. And I think to myself, that must be where Harold is. So I go up and I'm standing at the edge of the circle, waiting for it to get a little smaller and a little smaller and a little smaller. It took over an hour. Finally, there was enough room between me and you that I could come over to you. And as I was getting ready to say, Harold, Dina said to come introduce myself to you, I'm Patty Houlihan. That warm and nervous, oh my Lord. He looks at me and he says, you must be Patty Houlihan. All of my trepidation, all of my nerves, everything that I had just evaporated. I've heard so much about you. Dina just loves you. And anybody that Dina thinks is great and loves, I do too. He was the guru, the top of the top. I was like you all. I was just coming in. And I'm standing next to the Harold Davinsky. He wrapped his arm around and brought me in and made me feel like I was the only person at that conference. That's how it all started for me. You know all that he's done for the world of financial planning, so I don't need to tell you all that. But what I do want you to know is what he's done for people like me, people like you. My world would never be what it is today. But for you. And I say that because Harold believed in me. I'd been a high school math teacher. I had stopped to have children, my 2 sons, and then I lost my daughter. And I was so sad and needed to go back to work. And this is all just before I met Harold. Harold saw something in me that gave me the confidence to believe in me. You're going to have people in your lives, if you haven't already, here with your professors. When Harold believed in me and that I could do anything, he started making sure that if there was some group that needed to be together to decide whether or not we needed standards, Harold would put me as part of that group. We would meet and we would talk about, should we, at the CFP board, have standards of practice for us. I ended up being on the task force, and then I ended up going on to the sub board because of the Harold Davinsky that believed in me. I chaired that board, and as chairing that board, I then was on the Board of Governors to represent the voice of that board of practice standards. When I was the chair of the Practice Standards Board, Harold came to me and said, your name has been put in nomination to go on the Board of Governors on your own right, not through being the subsidiary board chair. And I said to Harold, but I'm not done at the Board of Practice Standards. I think I've got one more year. And he said, let me make this clear. You're being nominated now. So I said, yes, yes. I went on the Board of Practice Standards, and Harold, no surprise, asked me to be on his executive committee. I got to serve directly with Harold on his executive committee, and under his wing, I became chair-elect. Do you see the trend that's going on here? None of it would have happened but for my dearest friend. None of it. And I would go back home and I would say, can you believe this? I would go around the world. Harold and Dina called me at the last minute and asked me if I would go to Australia, to Sydney to speak to do a speaking engagement that they had. And then just to hop on over to Johannesburg for another speaking engagement. And Harold will know this. I said, Harold, I don't have a passport. I've never been out of the country. I've just been through a few states in the country. Harold said, get one. I called my son and I said, Ryan, doesn't PK work in the passport office downtown? He said, he does, Mom. Why? I said, I need a passport. I need it now. PK got me a passport in 2 days, which is unheard of. And am I right? I left the country for the first time to talk for Harold and Dina, not only in Johannesburg or in Sydney, but also in Johannesburg. So you understand, he is the Harold Davinsky here, but he is also the Harold Davinsky around the world. The respect that Harold has outside of this country is enormous, enormous. When we were Harold was chair for 2 years of the International Council, CFP Council, and then as chair of CFP Board, when I came in, I was supposed to be chair also for 2 years. I just needed Harold there longer. So Harold ended up 3 years as chair of the International CFP Council. And because of Harold, we now have what's known as the Financial Planning Standards Board, which is the board for all the world except us. That's one of the things that you don't know about Harold. The only reason that happened was because when Harold was chair, he said to all the international members of the council, if you want to become independent of CFP board, at that time housed in Denver, you need to step up and lead. Harold formed committees and said, you chair this committee, you chair this committee. Do you remember those days? And it's because of that that when I became the chair of CFP board and got to watch Harold as he chaired the World Council, funny story, and we were talking about it last night. Everybody in the council, for the most part, spoke English except for our Japanese colleagues. And so you'd put on the earphones, and then you'd have the simultaneous translation. Well, I had been on I had been around the world with Harold for several years, watching, learning, taking notes, getting my confidence, because it's not always at that time that women were in leadership roles and I needed to be confident. So I'm watching every council meeting. I'm watching how he conducts the council meetings. I'm watching how he responds to the questions of all of the member countries. The last meeting that I was going to have with Harold as chair, I am sweating bullets because I've gotten everything kind of figured out except Japan. So I watch for, usually they wouldn't say a lot, but at the end, we'd put on the earphones and then they would talk. And I am writing it down and I have no idea what they're saying. But it is English in my ear. But I have no idea what I'm going to say when it's my turn. So Harold, they finish. Harold comes up. He says, "Thank you so much for your remarks. They are so thoughtful. You can see." Went on and on and on. And I'm looking at my notes and I'm thinking, there's not a thing here that would have given me that. So I go up to him afterwards and I say, "Harold, how in the world did you know what they had said? I took notes. I didn't get what you said after they said. How did you do that?" He said, "Patty, I had no idea what they said either." He said, "I simply responded to what I wished they had said." That was all it took for me to then go on to chair that council for the next 2 years. And it was during those 2 years building, standing on the shoulders of Harold Davinsky, that we got that board established. And we got the marks as part of that board outside of this country. And it has made such a difference because people would start off when I would go into another country and they would say things like, "Patty, we really like you, but that US," and they would go against the country. But they'd always start off, "We really like you." And well, that phrase is mine. Harold gave me a cup that says, "Bless your heart." He also sent me a news clipping and said on the news clipping, "Now I understand." I grew up in a small, very small town, 6,000 people on the North Carolina-Virginia line. My mother used to say, "You can get a lot more with a lump of sugar than a lump of coal." And so from that came "Bless your heart." So if anybody said anything, that I could say, "Bless your heart." And it could mean, as this article said, "Bless your heart, the elevator doesn't go to the top." "Bless your heart, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard." But "bless your heart" is "bless your heart." And so Harold would say to me, "You can get away with more things with "bless your heart." And I would say to Harold, "I got to help you with your facial expressions." Because he would be looking at people and they were saying like, "Bless your heart, you're really stupid." And Harold would be, and I'd whisper in his ear, I'd say, "Expression, expression." So "Bless your heart" has been part of my life with Harold, and always with Harold. My "bless your heart" is, bless your heart for being the most incredibly wonderful friend, wonderful mentor, wonderful gift to the financial planning world, wonderful husband, wonderful father. You're not just a gentleman. You, my dear friend, are the gentlest man I've ever known. You give when you think there's no more you can give. You're there on the other end of the telephone whenever I just need to hear your voice. You've given me confidence. You've shown me love. And for me to be standing here right now, honoring you, is truly, thank you, Canute. It is truly a blessing like I've never had in my life. Because how often do you get to honor the person that has given you your world? And how often do you get to do that in a group that he's given you such basis? You were his assistant, I think. Am I right? That is a gift, honey, that you already know what it means. I had that gift for 27 years, counting on. To go and be and hear and learn and watch. There's no greater gift that any human being can give to another. None. And for me to be standing here, having taken the men of South Africa to task, headlines in the newspaper, only because I had the confidence, and it was all in love. It was all because of that man. You are the fiduciary of the world to me. You are the shining North Star. You are everything, Harold Davinsky, to me. Thanks, guys.
Wow. I'd like to revise my remarks now, if I might. So we do have a few minutes if anyone else would like to speak honoring Harold. And would you like them to come up here or hand them the mic for purposes of the cameras? Okay. Any brave souls?
I just want to say thank you, Harold, for all the time. I mean, we paid this man next to nothing. We got you a little raise later on, but I mean, you were working from your heart here. Not only a great faculty in terms of teaching to the students, but a great colleague for those of us on the faculty, right? You know, those of us who served with him. I know he would come to faculty meetings and think we were a bunch of idiots because actually getting a PhD and becoming an academic, there is something idiotic about that. We'd have discussions that I know you had to be rolling your eyes at, but you didn't roll your eyes. So anyway, but thank you so much for all the investments you've made in the next generation and Texas Tech. And he wears the greatest bow ties and cufflinks and red and black when he gets in the media. So thanks for everything, Harold.
Come on up. Oh, who first?
I'm Dawnine Fitzsimmons and had the privilege of being in Harold Davinsky's wealth management class. Who else had Harold for wealth management?
Most.
That is a lot of people. And Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook said, when you're offered a ride on a rocket, you don't say, which seat do I get? You just get on and go. And that's what it was like to be in Harold's class. You open the syllabus to the first week, and you have 15 papers to read by the next week. And there's a quiz. And in the end, you do remember something about Brinson, B. Bauer, and Hood, and all of these people that I had never heard of before I came to Tech. I feel really privileged to have met all of you, and especially privileged to have gotten on the rocket before it left. Thank you, Harold.
We have time for one or two more. By the way, I would bet he read those 15 papers the previous week and wrote and published a summary of them in one of our trade publications.
Thank you. Tiffany Murray, second year PhD. I just want to get up here and just say thank you to Professor Ivinsky and also Professor Katz. I had the privilege and honor of taking both of their classes this past spring, and just I was talking to Dr. Hampton earlier this week, and just, I don't know if it's conveyed to all the students, but I just want to take this time to let you guys know, like, we understand like who you guys are. Like, it is it's amazing. It's amazing to have had the opportunity to learn from you guys. Your practical experience, the books and things that you guys have written. I read Professor Katz's book before I got here, and then to find out that she's married to Professor Ivinsky, and they are just the cutest couple ever. And I love them so much, and I just thank you guys for just all of the experience that you guys have given to us and have shared with us, and your family, and just kind of sharing with us how you guys got started, and how you guys helped to continue, and your dedication and your generosity as far as giving back to the students. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the students. We love you guys.
Thank you. You motioned me a minute ago. We have time. We have plenty of time. So, one at a time, everybody needs to come up. Wearing an Ivinsky bow tie.
I know, this was actually in honor of you. It was. I wear this maybe once every 2 years, so I thought for you I'd wear it today. I did not have the privilege of having your class, but when I was working and I had been accepted to Texas Tech, I started reading your book. And it was one of those experiences of reading your book and looking around going, yes, this is what we should do. This is what we should hold ourselves up to be. And so the impression that you made on me is two things I'll always remember, and that's that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard and study and work to be able to serve those who have trusted in us. And the 5-year rule. Those are the two things I'll always remember. But that standard that you have held out for us is shared by the community here and the teachers here. And so it's something that even while you're not here, your influence will carry on. So thank you.
Well said. What is the 5-year rule? Gotcha. 5 years of liquidity if needed. Right here.
Preston Cherry. Professor Ivinsky, I learned a few things from you, actually. I've had the privilege of having sidebars with you. I love our sidebars over the last few years, where you've made a speech or I've been in your class, and we'd have a little sidebar, and you transfer one of the curse words that you said in class to like 4. So, so I appreciated that. And you're a man of style, which I appreciate as well. I hope I have that much style when I'm there. Also, too, what I appreciated the most was your stories. That's what helped me the most. Being a practitioner is talking to people and connecting people on the couch. What are the couch skills? And you helped me with that a great deal after being in your classes and knowing you. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Newt, looks like the floor is yours. Oh. Uh-oh. The floor belongs to Professor Katz.
So I'm going to tell you a little story. Harold and I had been married for many years, And I, some of you have heard this story before, but I came home and I discovered I'd had breast cancer, and it took me about 7 months to get better. And Harold was with me, holding my hand every minute. And I went back to work the first day after 7 months, and I met with a lady who, for about the fourth time in our relationship together, client and professional, she said, I need you to help me craft language to cut my daughter out of her will, out of my will, because she's dating a man I don't like. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd always, kind of talk her around and do, things. Well, if you do this, this might happen. And this time I looked at her, and I'd just been through facing my own mortality, 7 months of getting better, and being really dependent upon Harold, who also was running the company and doing all these marvelous things around the world. And I looked at this woman and I said, Gloria, get a life. You either love your daughter or you don't. If you love her, stop waggling your money in front of her face and get on with life. And I got up and I walked down the hallway, and I walked into Harold's office and I said, well, I think we just lost a client, and I got to get out of here. So I looked around for something to do, and by happenstance, Vicki Hampton and Gordon, her husband, and I found ourselves in an airport waiting to go somewhere from somewhere. And we sat down and I began to talk about, I needed to move to the next phase, but I didn't know what that was. And we began to talk about all the work that was being done here at Texas Tech. And when I got home, I sent her a note and I said, I want a job. And she said, well, you can always come out here and speak. I said, no, I want to be a tenured professor. I want to be dedicated to this. And so she said, well, we'll work it out. And then I went to my husband, Harold, and said, I've accepted a job at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. Where? We were in Miami. So it wasn't like it was across the street, is what I'm saying. So he sat down next to me and he looked at me and he said, Dina, this is where you need to go. I'm with you, and we'll make it work. This is so important. And for 5 years, we lived apart, went back and forth while I taught. And one day I said to him, if we have a place for you to teach here, would you do it? And he said, in a minute. He'd never asked what they were going to pay him, which, by the way, took care of maybe, a month of our expenses. But he's been that way, not just with me because I'm his wife, but with everyone that he comes in contact with. Every single person gets his support, his interest. He does anything he can do for any of you to have a better life in a better way. So, Harold, as you know, I am and have been incredibly proud of you. But more importantly, I'm proud of all of you whose lives have been touched, even if it's this much, by someone who really, really cares about you and really cares about this profession.
Wow. Cute couple. Hmm? Anybody want to try to top that? No way. Okay. I've been waiting for you.
I can't outdo Patty, but I have a lot of the same sentiment towards Harold. He's given me a lot personally in my life, professionally, and I'll keep this short, but a couple of favorite things. One, that it's okay to get the turkey at the office. Everyone know what the turkey is. Every staff meeting, we have a turkey and a star. If you did something well, you want to celebrate it, you get the star. If you did something not so great, you got the turkey to reflect throughout the week. And so typically you don't want the turkey because that means you did something bad. Harold was exempt from the turkey at the firm. I'm exempt in the Lubbock office now. And I know it's okay. It has nothing to do with your caring of what's upstairs. Huh? Well, because we get it all the time. I have a turkey. It's in my office here. It's at the office at the firm. It just stays in my office. So my favorite story of Harold's was coming back from a trip, I believe it was, and got a car home, or a cab home, and his car wasn't at home, and I think he got a little freaked out, and then realized that his car was at the airport. He had driven there. So it's those kind of, huh? What? Oh yeah, you got to make that cab leave and got to get a different cab. You can't show. And so those type of stories, and it makes you feel good. But thank you so much. Again, much like Patty said, it made me sit and think of how many things now in my life, really, Harold and Dina, I've given it. You have to act and work hard, right? But I've been given the opportunity and take advantage of it, how much it's gotten me in my life. So thank you and love you both.
A lot of the themes I'm hearing from each of you as you come up here is that if you put people first, everything else will tend to fall into line. A lesson we've learned from you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Mr. Rostad, would you like to do the honors? No, I can't touch some of these that have. Well, no, I can't either. So, you know what I'm going to do? What are you going to do? Yes, same here.
Wow. I thought I knew Harold, but I now realize that I didn't know a lot about Harold based on what I've learned. But I have a little bit of a different role. Harold, this is where you and I have the talk. No, not that talk. This extends from what Deborah said this morning about what this award is about and who we have given it to, who the selection committee has given it to. And I'm just one person on the selection committee, so I'll say candidly that the first two honorees I did not know very well, Robert Monks and Gary Gensler. Since then, I've come to know Bob Monks fairly darn well, and talk about. My grandfather used to talk about. My grandfather graduated in Cornell in 1922, so that's his generation. His highest compliment for anyone, and this was his generation, excuse me, ladies, was to be a gentleman and a scholar. I remember that so well. But I would add to that something that Deborah started talking about our recent honorees, and the ones that I know the best. Phyllis Borsey and Barb Roper. There is a story, there are lots of stories about what Phyllis Borsey had to go through as heading up this effort at the Department of Labor, which I guarantee you have not been told. Because she would never, ever say how much pressure she was under, how much bad behavior she was the target of, She would never, ever do that. I guess the asterisk is I don't know whether she's going to do that in her memoirs. I don't know. But Phyllis Borsey is an amazing public servant. And again, most of the story hasn't been told, I think. And then we moved to last year, Barb Roper, investor advocate for Consumer Federation of America. Barb Roper, I think, and Harold sort of started at the same time in their respective professions. I think she's been at Consumer Federation now for 32 years. She has been focused on fiduciary for about 31 and a half of those years. And she is an extraordinary, has been an extraordinary, is an extraordinary advocate for what it means to take investor protection seriously and what it means to be a fiduciary. And bar none, she has been front and center with the regulators trying to get them to do the right thing. The fact that they haven't listened very often is certainly not her fault. But I think about Barb, I think about Phyllis Borsey, and I think about what Professor DeMott was talking about. And I also talk about people that inspire you. What she talked about, Professor Frankel, she doesn't begin to capture the picture. Professor Frankel may be our biggest cheerleader. I literally speak to her almost once a month for some reason. I spoke with her just 2 weeks ago. She is 93 years young, and she doesn't stop. And I'm going to come around, Harold. But the most recent example was we visited with the chairman of the SEC in June. There were 9 of us in our group, and both Professor Frankel and Phyllis Borsey were there. When people heard that we're going to have Phyllis Borsey join us, they said, "Are you crazy? The SEC doesn't like her." I said, "So?" But here we have the picture of the chairman of the SEC at the end of the table, and on one side is Phyllis, and the other side is Tamar, and they are not holding back at all. And I have that picture in my mind, which I will never forget, because that speaks to their courage, that speaks to their persistence, that speaks to their integrity. And when I think about those who we've honored, the courage, the persistence, the integrity are the features that stand out. So my experience with Harold is much shorter and narrower in a sense, but I remember them vividly from the time that we were with Blaine and Kate and in charge of the committee for the fiduciary standard, and we would speak on the phone like every 2 weeks, or thereabouts. And one of the things I remember is that there were some things that Harold and I did not agree on. But gosh, I wouldn't trade those phone calls for anything in the world. From a selfish point of view, I learned more in those calls than I've learned in all sorts of other ways. So for that, I'm personally grateful, Harold, but more broadly, grateful for what you mean to so many others in the industry. As I said, when I was speaking in front of the classes yesterday and the day before, I said I was glad to be here at Tech because I look forward to engaging in the next generation of planners, and that I was glad to be here to honor an individual who, if you surveyed the planners around the country today and asked them who they most respected and who had the biggest imprint in the industry, on the industry, there would be no question that it would be Harold, unless Dina got a few more votes and came out in front. But anyway, that's the way it would come out. So on that basis, this to me was a very common sense, easy decision by the selection committee. And on that basis, I want to congratulate you, Harold, and present to you the 2018 Frankel Fiduciary Prize presented to Harold Ivinsky for outstanding service and significant contributions to the preservation and advancement of fiduciary principles in public life.
Say this is a humbling experience. It's a massive understatement. I'm still trying to figure out how some of these people we're talking about, but just thank you. And given the past recipients of this, it's like, you got to be kidding, but thank you. It's a group that I don't feel like I belong to, but I'm happy to. And certainly all the students, practitioners, and future professors. That is so exciting. We need you so desperately, and y'all all lucked out being at the right place at the right time. And my friends and associates and faculty, what a great ride. Thank y'all very much.